Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and a huge welcome to all of those joining us for the fourth and final webinar of 2018 in the Maiden Voyage, Your Best Travel Self webinar series. Today's webinar is on insider tips for beating jet lag to help you get and stay travel fit. It's brought to you in partnership with the amazing Chris Babayode, who is the founder of maiden-voyage.com and travel wellness expert. Today's webinar is kindly sponsored by EasyJet. So a little introduction to Maiden Voyage for you, for those of you who don't know. We're all about making travel safe and social for female business travellers and LGBT travellers. Statistics show that 1 in 4 women have experienced some form of harassment whilst travelling on business, and as many as 79% say they wouldn't know what to do should something happen to them. We help businesses fulfil their duty of care to their travellers, and we educate travellers on the possible risks to help mitigate them. After all, you don't know what you don't know. We do this through 4 different ways. We offer female traveller safety training, whether or not that's classroom or e-learning. We have corporate membership solutions. We also do hotel inspections all over the world, whereby we provide those who have passed as female friendly certified to our corporate partners. And of course, we also offer these travel wellbeing webinars, which are generic to both men and women. Webinars have already taken place this year, and they've been on travel wellbeing. We've also had one on navigating international cultures, and our last one was on stress. As you know, today is on beating jet lag, and we're looking forward to hearing from Chris shortly. So these webinars have been delivered and developed based on feedback from the Maiden Voyage community on areas that you say you need support in. And we'll be looking forward to the 2019 webinar series very shortly. And in the follow-up email from today, I will be asking for your opinions on what you would like to see going forward to 2019. So my name is Erica. I'm the operations manager here at Maiden Voyage. My role today is very simple, and that is to facilitate this webinar for you all. And I've got my fingers crossed that our technology is on our side today. So I'm going to release a quick poll for you. I've got a bit ahead of myself there. So if you can just take a minute, I'm just going to release this poll. So have you started your festive shopping yet? So the answer is yes, of course, or no. So if you get those votes in, Chris and I were just talking about this before we went online, and I have done all of my Christmas shopping and wrapped all of my presents, and Chris hasn't done any of his yet. So let's see what the responses are to that. Let's close that and we'll share that. Okay, so 11% of you, so I'm in with 11% of you, and 89% say no way, far more last minute. Well, the sales do start towards the Christmas, don't they? So maybe you'll get some more bargains than what we did. Okay, so thank you very much. We know technology is working. So I'm just going to go through a little bit of housekeeping before I introduce you to Chris. This webinar is going to last about an hour. It is being recorded. A copy of this recording will be sent to you following the session and will be available for you for a limited amount of time. Slides are copyright of Maiden Voyage and or nojetstress.com. And as we've just done, there will be a few polls released throughout to gain some insight into you as business travellers of today. And of course, everybody is completely different and we've all got very different experiences. So please, if you have any questions, feel free to put them forward. You can do this simply by posting them in the question box. And if you do want to remain anonymous, please just put that in there as well. So I know we're all super busy, but please do allow yourself this hour to invest in you in the quest to become your best travel self. So without further ado, I'm going to hand over to Chris to educate you and help you over the next 45 minutes. So Chris, I'm just going to share the controls with you, and then we're going to go over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much, Erica. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Christopher Babayode. And I have spent 20 years traveling the globe, with one of the UK's largest airlines. I've travelled to over 40 plus countries, travelled over 1,275,000 miles. I'm also a travel wellness advocate, and I'm author of Farewell Jet Lag Cures from a Flight Attendant. A little bit more about my story is the fact that in working for the airline, we were often faced with burnout and stress, adrenal-related stress in particular, and this was part of the hallmark of the community that I belong to as pilots and crew. And it's my desire to actually offer tools that can enable us to be our best self and to produce the goods and have a decent work-life balance that have brought me to the point where I offer this kind of information, insight, advice, and consultation services for the people that I work with. Our agenda today is quite full, so I would like to be able to offer you as much value as possible. So I'm going to assume that you give me permission to move a bit faster should we need to, in order to cover all the areas that we'd like to start with here. So running down our agenda, we're going to look at why now? Why do we need this type of solution? We're going to look at what jet lag is, our approach to jet lag, the fundamentals, a system to manage our jet lag and our sleep. Then we're going to look at your why, how strong is that, and how does it drive you forward in finding solutions that are necessary for you to come out with all of the goods, which is the ability to function in the roles that you are, enjoy the process, or enjoy just being back home if that's what floats your boat in terms of getting the job done. We're going to look at toolkits, and we're also going to look at a special class of tools known as adaptogens. So with that, we're going to move on to our first poll, which is, what is your most pressing jet lag concern? Fatigue, deeper health impact, or performance on the road? Erica, can I ask you to release the poll, please?
Yep, absolutely. That's coming up on the screen now. So as Chris said, what is your most pressing jet lag concern? Is it fatigue, the deeper health impacts around jet lag, or performance on the road? So what is the most pressing? I appreciate it might be a bit of everything, but what is the most pressing? Okay, so everybody's voted, so I'm going to close that vote. And I'm going to share that on the screen. So you can see that 70% have said fatigue, Chris, 10% say the deeper health impact, and 20% say performance on the road.
Okay, that's great. So now we've got a bit of an idea of who's in the room. So I'm going to try and slant as much of this material, as it were, towards looking at energy and how to ramp that up. They're all interrelated, but having that insight is very useful. So thank you very much for doing that. So this is something to think about at a time when globalization and technology make the world smaller. When it really matters, nothing beats being there, wherever there is yourself. Presence is where it's at, but you can't fly around the world and be fully present if you're jet lagged. I'd like to leave that for us to think about and to let that twist in the wind, as they say, so that we can get an idea of what it is we want to be present to. We know we can't be present without energy, or fully present and operate in the roles that we have set for ourselves or are obliged to do. And this whole idea of being present is the culmination of looking after your health on the road so that you can perform and get the benefits thereof. So let's move on to, why do we need this type of jet lag solution now? Well, basically because the short-term solutions that are currently around just aren't working. They are short-sighted. They do not offer health as an opportunity if people continue to use them, and therefore they do not meet the grade of what can be considered a cure. What we actually want to do is to be able to have things that are sustaining, and the only way to do that is via looking at healthy options. At the moment, the challenges specifically that relate to my career of flying have been around the area of energy, which, if not kept in check, can lead down the road to adrenal fatigue, which opens up burnout and things of that related nature. But quite specifically, I'd like to refer to a piece of research that was done in 2015, I believe. It's called A Darker Side of Hypermobility. And hypermobility in this context is not being double jointed. It's actually the idea of being in multiple locations and traveling quite often. It's a Cohen and Gosling paper, and it draws some interesting, it's a cohort study, and it draws out some interesting facts about the life of frequent travelers. In particular, they have shot immune systems, they are deathly fatigued, they are more susceptible to mental health challenges, and blood sugar issues that lead to diabetes are also a challenge because of the hormonal upset that frequent travel brings. So health issues, the cost is one to the person, and it's not necessarily something that we want to put up with, because we know if we don't have our health, then there's not much else that we can do. When it comes to the economy, the opinion research poll of 2016 estimated that £241 million was lost to jet lag in the UK alone. And this is a cost that businesses have to bear as much as the person this is a cost to the business, and the only real way of managing it is to try and mitigate that cost. But that's not the only cost that's involved. Going back to the darker side of hypermobility, it talks about the social cost, the cost to society, with the idea that people who are often away sometimes leave with guilt about the responsibilities they've left behind, and the people who are left behind have the challenges of picking up that additional responsibility. Sometimes there's resentment, and that feeds into the social structures that we have, and therefore it's a loss to our society. So as such, whether it's individual, economical, or society, we are paying a high price, and we need to be able to get our head around that there are better ways of managing this that are not as costly and allow us to come out the other side with our health intact. So again, our next poll is asking the question, what is flying to you? Is it a pleasure, a chore, or a necessary evil? Can I ask you to release the poll for this time, please, Erica?
Yep, sure, will do, Chris. Great question. Depends if it's going on holiday, I suppose. However, I think flying to me is still, I think I would put it as a necessary evil. But anyway, I'm sure everyone's got their own opinions on that. So let's get those in. And I guess it also depends on the airline.
It can do, and where you're sitting on that aircraft as well. So
yeah, absolutely. Okay, we'll give it a couple more seconds. Okay, I'm going to close that vote now and share it. Okay, so we can see that 60% say that they find flying a pleasure, which is wonderful to hear. 30% say that it's a chore, and 10% say it's a necessary evil. So interesting for you to continue there. Back over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much. Great. Well, that's heartening to hear. In particular, there are figures out that suggest that up to 40% of people turn up at the airport already stressed. And that's no way to start a journey, because your physiology is what you bring to the plane. And it's one of those factors that we'll talk more about that gives us an insight as to how to manage the flying experience and the travel-related stress that can ensue. So that's great. So what is jet lag? Well, it might sound like a silly question, but jet lag tends to be described as an upset, a dysynchronization of the circadian rhythms. And while that is a good starting point, it doesn't give a fullness to the idea of how we can tackle it, and it circumscribes the exact tools that we'll focus on. So in my experience, I found that there's a wider definition that is useful and is more pertinent to our purposes of creating tools that sustain us. So that new definition is that jet lag is an upset in the body's normal mode of functioning in a compromised environment, which upsets patterns, physiology, reference points, and our energy. And that basically gives us leeway to look at the kinds of tools that we can use to address all those reference points, the physiology, our emotional health in the equation, and things of that nature. It's defined specifically like that, and the emphasis is on it's a compromised environment, because oftentimes when we take to the skies, you know, you get on a plane, you sit down, and you don't necessarily have the awareness of the fact that the aircraft is pressurized until maybe you get off, or if you have a cold, then maybe you feel it in your ears. But otherwise, it's not something that people note, and when they don't necessarily note it, they don't understand the implications of working or sitting in a hyperbaric environment, and this is an environment with less oxygen. So having just offered you that definition, I would like you to forget that definition to a certain extent, because frequent flyers don't actually suffer from jet lag. What they suffer from is jet stress. Jet lag is actually an acute condition, as in the word lag. Jet stress is something that's chronic because it's chronically acute. Someone who's jet lagged has the opportunity to get to their location if they're traveling once or twice a year. And I do understand that not everyone's a 4 times a month trip taker, a business trip taker. But if you don't have the frequency, you have the luxury of being able to recuperate just by the fact that you don't have the volume of trips to go by. If you are a frequent flyer, you are jet stressed, I would say. And you're jet stressed because you don't have that luxury of being able to recuperate before you take off again and again and again. And in doing so, what tends to happen is that vitality is worn down, it's lost, and it's not easily replaced unless people take extended periods of time off. When I see people, it tends to be that maybe they have the foresight to want to do something up front, or unfortunately, they've got themselves to a point where adrenal stress and their energies are really causing them challenges in their ability to perform their role, and therefore they need the kinds of tools that enable them to build vitality on the road as they go about their business. So in making that distinction, we come to a point where we can actually think of a system with which to tackle the challenge of jet lag. And in doing so, we're going to talk about principles. I would like you to think of these as principles because it empowers you to look at any different option that is offered to you and told that it's a jet lag cure. You'll be able to fathom yourself whether it is or whether you can incorporate it into procedures or your approach to staying healthy and energized while on the road. So the first principle is environments. And these are not just physical environments. Yes, the environment on the plane is important. As I mentioned, it's a compromised environment because there's less oxygen. You also have your biochemistry, which is an environment, but you also have your mental space, your emotional environment, your what's on your mind. These count. And as a principle, if someone's offering you something that relates to manipulating that environment, then it becomes useful or not, as the case may be. The second principle is the principle of acclimatization. We go places and we acclimatize, but when we're talking about acclimatization in this manner, what we're talking about is local, i.e. you're acclimatized to the destination you just landed in, but then external to you. So if you arrive in the evening, you get on local time, that's something that you want to cultivate. If you arrive at night, then you get on to the nighttime schedule, and you're able to manipulate that and see it as a way of doing things that inform your travel itinerary. The third principle I'd like to offer you is the principle of entrainment. The ability to entrain yourself is paramount. And when you look at it as a principle, it's this idea that we are naturally entrained to sea level, because that's where the human beings have grown up and been all the time. So yes, we are out of our comfort zone when we take to a plane. And if we can get present to that and see entrainment as a principle, it's something that we will seek as we go around looking at what works for me, what kind of solution can I actually really incorporate into my lifestyle that works. So those are the 3 fundamental principles. And with that, I will move on to the 6 steps to master jet lag. And the principles come back into play here. But let's take the first one, which is protection. We all need protection from the environment of travel. As I've said, it's an environment that has less oxygen. There's ionizing radiation in and around the plane at altitude. But at the same time, the most power that we can get to actually do that comes from managing our biochemistry. Tools to manage our biochemistry are important because if you have an acid environment within, it hampers you being able to get the best out of yourself in an environment where there's less oxygen than is necessary than you would like to have. So I am going to literally start offering you some specific supplement tips, and I would ask you to use your own judgment. If you are on any medication, please refer to your primary healthcare practitioner. But when it comes to looking after your environment in terms of protection, supplements that really work and have been found to help are sodium alginate. Quite specifically, you can use a group of supplements called adaptogens, and we're going to go into these in a lot more detail later. A high, and generally speaking, a high mineral and antioxidant balance is also really important to have, because these help you protect the biology and help you build vitality on top of the biology that you're actually protecting. So the next item is the ability to stay hydrated. We know aircraft cabins are drying. Managing that through the idea of quality water, or something that's known as wetter water that is absorbed better because it has certain properties, is something that you could consider. There is a supplement by the name of Mega Hydrate, which is known to donate hydrogen, and hydrogen is a negatively charged electron, so it's an antioxidant, and the ability to have as much hydrogen donators or electron donators in your body is a degree to which you can solve the free radicals that are produced from stress of any type. So making sure that you stay hydrated with real water is really good as well. But if you don't have quality water, using a supplement like Mega Hydrate is a great addition to your arsenal. Next, we come on to acclimatization, and these are the specifics of what you do. So the strongest way that we understand what time it is to do things in the body are triggered by something called Zeitgebers. Zeitgebers is German for the word time givers, and we have some that are hard set, like light exposure and the type of light exposure, and then we have some that are built around social norms. So if you land somewhere and it's dinner time, go and have dinner, then it helps you entrain, because as human beings, we are sociable because that's in our DNA, it's in our makeup. The ability to actually do that can be encouraged or discouraged by the things that we do with our biochemistry when we land into different places. So acclimatizing local to where you are, but externally, whether it's going out, meeting people or not meeting people, eating or not eating, these also give your body cues, Zeitgebers, that tell your body what time it is and what it can and should or could do. Next is rhythms. Now this is an interesting one, because rhythms, people tend to refer that specifically and only to circadian rhythms. Now circadian rhythms are in the mix here, but there are more rhythms. There are other rhythms like ultradian rhythms, which last about 90 minutes, that also govern certain patterns in the body. So rhythms is a better descriptor for that, because while you want to understand your circadian pattern, because it's important, these other rhythms can help you become more productive, be more energized, because they work on a different frequency. So ultradian rhythms, for instance, are cycles of 90 minutes, and there is a pattern in there that can help you manage your attention and your desire to want to be more relaxed and not so attentive. So in managing rhythms, again, with the caveat that you should always be careful when supplementing, I would recommend something like 5-HTP, but please do check with your primary care practitioner, because there is research that demonstrates that as a frequent flyer, this can help you, because if you are flying east-west all the time, your melatonin can be upset. And in the UK, for instance, you cannot buy melatonin over the counter, and using 5-HTP is a way of priming the melatonin pathway. And this is a more elegant way of doing this, and it's important simply because hormones work in concert with each other, and as such you can upset the apple cart if you dump pure melatonin, if you can get it wherever you are, into the bloodstream. So using 5-HTP enables you to prime that pathway, and the body's intelligence can then decide how much more melatonin it may or may not need. Another thing you can do to help get yourself into rhythm is, it's actually comes from a chronobiological discovery, which is that a time shift recovery is deemed achieved. And what I mean by that is you are deemed acclimatized to a location when your metabolism rises and then drops back to normal. And you can actually use exercise or a sauna or a far infrared sauna to actually raise that base metabolic rate, and that can help you accelerate the idea of acclimatizing through managing your rhythms in your body. Then we come to environments, which we've touched on ever so briefly, but your biochemistry, whether it's on the acid side of the acid-alkaline scale or the alkaline side, can determine the resources that you have in order to make sure that you bring you bring balance to your biochemistry and are able to void out the stress, the biochemical stress, which manifests as acids out of your body. Then we have the environment of the plane, and this is one that's a favorite because oftentimes people get on an aircraft, are not aware of the fact that it's a hyperbaric environment, so there's less oxygen, tend to drink alcohol, and yes, there's a time and place for that. Maybe coming back from a trip is a better place to do that rather than going when you're going to perform or you're going into a meeting and you want to arrive and be able to function at your best, because the acidifying nature of this dulls our senses and our sense of being able to perform, and it's part of the picture of jet lag that we want to avoid. So eating an alkaline diet is one way of doing that, or juicing non-sweet fruits is another option that you might want to consider as part of a lifestyle habit, only in as much as managing that terrain and what can grow in that terrain and support you becomes easier when you're eating from an alkaline diet or a more alkaline diet than you are now, in order to help you produce more energy. The ability to produce more energy is the ability to produce electricity, and this is governed by the acid-base balance in the body, which can be helped once you manage your environment. So if we take those 5 steps, we wrap them up in a wrapper of wellness, and these are things like having a steady exercise routine. And it's not the same for everyone. Some people are more inclined to go out there and pound the treadmill, while others will do Pilates or yoga, things of that nature. It's about finding what's right for you so you have sustainability and the desire to want to do this as an investment for yourself. And it also comes to the types of things that you might consider. We've covered diet, water, getting quality water, maybe installing a water system in your home if you're so inclined, could be a useful investment. It's the gamut of all the things that you can do easily that fit into your lifestyle. I say this like this because the Argonne Institute have a diet that is handed out to the United States State Department, but it requires you to fast at certain times and to binge at other times. And I don't know about you, but if you're a busy traveler, you don't have time to start calculating 3 days before you go away, when you need your faculties as much as any other time, to start going on a fast in order to manage the situation, then overdosing on caffeine to perk you up. So I think this is a more elegant way of doing that, and it's a way of wrapping those 5 steps into one. to get you to an easily manageable system. So the success system is the farewell system, and this is the approach that I recommend. In and amongst that is the idea of how much sleep we are getting. So with that, we've got another poll, and the question is, how do you sleep on planes? Well, yes, not so well. No, I can't. No, I work. Erica, can you release the next poll, please?
Yes, of course. I'm just launching that for you now. So you should see that on your screen if you can take a second to vote. So do you sleep on planes? Yes, well, yes, not so well. No, absolutely, I can't. Or no, I work. Okay, a couple more seconds coming in there. Okay, so we've got everyone that's voted. So I'm going to close that and I'm going to share that with you on the screen. So you can see there, Chris, that 10% sleep really well, which is fabulous. 50% say yes, but not so well, and 40% say no, I can't, and no one works. So there we go. So you get a bit of a quiet time, maybe watching some films on catch up. So I'm going to close that for you now and hand back over to you, Chris.
Thank you very much. Well, that's great that no one works. Obviously, none of you were on my flights when I was still flying as such. So a lot of people have the challenge of sleep, so it's not surprising to see that challenge in the poll figures as such. Sleep. The problem with sleep for frequent flyers is the idea that we don't manage to get enough deep sleep in the mix. And this is really challenging because deep sleep is responsible for repair, it's responsible for long-term memory transfer and consolidation, and we get growth hormone spurts, and physical energy is predicated on good quality deep sleep. And to add insult to injury, if people don't, well, as people age, deep sleep tends to become even more scarce. So that's the problem. The effects are, as I've delineated, as such, but more importantly, the solutions are things that you can implement yourself, and they are also things that exercise will help with. And you can also supplement to get better quality deep sleep. When it comes to actually going away and making sure, well, to start with, I should actually say, if you're not sleeping well on the plane, I highly recommend a pair of noise cancelling headphones, which I think is pretty much standard now for people who travel often, which is quite good. But also you can get biofeedback apps. Banzai Labs is one that I've used in the past, and it's really good because it's just an app and it has entrainment music that helps both sides of your brain synchronize and causes you to go into the natural pattern that human beings have used to fall asleep for millennia. So using that helps you get to that space where you would naturally fall asleep as if you're in your own bed, albeit you're on an aircraft. So that's one of the tools that's easily available in conjunction with a decent pair of noise cancelling headphones. And the other thing that's really quite useful is to have a decent eye mask, because we are very much susceptible and sensitive to light. We may have heard about how blue screens affect us, but nighttime ambient light is a challenge that's been discussed in Nature magazine, whereby we're seeing the effects across nature, and it's also affecting our circadian rhythms for when we want to sleep, and it's a challenge. So how do you get a good night's sleep, whether it be on an aircraft or in a hotel room? The idea is to be cognizant of keeping the rituals that you have at home, have them away and abide by them. Make sure you understand your body temperature. I think 18 degrees Celsius is the maximum room temperature that you should have. You should always have some air in the room, because this helps your body temperature synchronize and enables you to get decent sleep If you're not able to do that, fall asleep as comfortably as you can, but then be conscious that you might have to take layers off as the night goes on in order to help you readjust your temperature as such. Another often neglected area is what is known as the enteric nervous system, which is your gut's connection to your brain. Sometimes we go out for business dinners and late meals interfere, one, with our ability to get deep sleep, because deep sleep happens in the early part of the night. And if you've gone out to dinner in the evening, then digestion can be upset or delayed because your gut is at the moment busy digesting the meal you just had. And unfortunately, alcohol is quite distinctly known now to be an interrupter of good quality sleep. So these are things we might want to modify in order to help us get deep sleep and create a sleep ritual that works for us. A little aside is that the use of magnesium is good as a supplemental form, but also transdermally, if you can get a magnesium oil or lotion, this also is very good for relaxing. And as 65% of us worldwide are magnesium deficient, we can always do with decent sources of magnesium to make up that shortfall and help us along the way. So we now move on to sleep technology. I'm an advocate of sleep technology simply because it's useful, it has its place. I've mentioned one of those items being the biofeedback or the apps. These enable you to access different brainwave states that are good for you, so you can be entrained, get to sleep, have a quick nap, and allow you to wake up refreshed to go about being as productive as you want to be. Sleep technology, there's the good, the bad, and the ugly. The good, just mentioned some of it, the biofeedback, red light, using far infrared lights, whether it's in a sauna or a light that you're able to expose yourself to before you sleep. This is the natural light frequency that we've experienced before we invented light and went down the path of creating fluorescent lights. And again, it's one of those things that is a subtle entrainer and helps you get into that relaxed state. So it's always quite useful. Another thing that I've used for many years is called a grounding sheet, and it looks like a sleeping bag. And the grounding sheet itself has silver threads going through it, and you connect it to the mains, but you only connect the earth part. The live is not used at all. And this helps you draw negative electrons from the circuitry of the building, because unless you live in a really old house, all buildings are earthed so that the electricity can function within the building. So this is really useful. It was actually designed for Tour de France athletes. If you consider how grueling that sport is, they need to recuperate fairly quickly for the next stages, and it was designed around them. I think we can make a comparison and say that it could be useful for people who fly often. And my experience and my clients' experience have been that it helps them wake up rejuvenated the next day better than they could probably achieve any other way. Plus, you actually cut out the need to think of grounding yourself by going outside and stepping on the grass if it's the middle of winter. So sleep, really, the other things to mention about sleep are that there's a study that suggests that if you're a long-term meditator or mindfulness practitioner, they tend to register deeper and better quality deep sleep spurts in their data. So if you have any practice that works along those lines, it's a good idea to continue that practice. And it's never too late to start for the benefits of bringing your stress levels down and also managing your sleep. So that in a nutshell is the methodology for managing the sleep that I've worked with. The whole idea is that you pick and choose what's right for you, and from that you build your own toolkit, which is what we're coming on to shortly. In the meantime, the strongest factor I found is for you to find out your why. What is important to you and why? Because then that gives you the mindset, the mental frame to be able to do this and do it when it's inconvenient as well as when it is convenient to do. My why, and the reason I have chosen to go about this, was out of a need for myself, because when I was flying, I knew that I didn't want to be burnt out. I didn't want to have adrenal fatigue. I wanted to move on, enjoy the job I was doing, which 60% of you guys clearly do, which is great. But health is an important factor that allows you to move beyond the rut that can come from frequent traveling and the stresses that entails. So, having said that, I have an invitation for you, and this invitation is geared to offer you an opportunity to manage your sleep in one of the best ways possible for this current time. At the moment, big business always looks to data and the ability to manage and harvest data, and to use machine learning to harvest the nuances that enable them to make decisions, that give them feedback and enable them to construct business models and initiatives that work for the business. Well, we want to apply that same type of thinking to our health. We have the ability, we have the tech, and it's along those lines that I have an invitation for you. So at the moment, we understand that people are being burnt out in the space that we occupy. We know that people aren't necessarily present. We know the health costs of flying to ourselves, to our families, and to the economy. And in order to try and mitigate that and create great health, we need to understand our ability to leverage the underused assets that we have. And one of those is the quality of your sleep. If we do nothing in this space, we will continue to have substandard results, and we can do better. And the way to do better that I've found is to use an Aura ring in the mix of the technology that I use when I'm flying. The Aura ring was recently in the news because Prince Harry was found to be wearing one, and it's a device that is comparable to the gold standard of measuring sleep quality, a polysomnograph. If we do nothing, more people suffer, and it's my mission to actually talk to the frequent flying environment and flyers like yourselves and ask you to consider being selfish in trying the ring itself, but also donating anonymized data to the makers of the ring so that they can consider creating an algorithm that takes into account the multi-phased, mixed up sleep patterns that we have and incorporating it into the ring, or actually making a ring specifically for the market of frequent flyers. And that might sound far-fetched, but it's not, because the Apple Watch 4 has a pulse oximeter inside it, which hasn't been okayed by the FDA yet. But when it does get, or if it does get okayed by the FDA, chances are that may be a go-to item for frequent flyers, because pulse blood oximetry allows you to know how much toxins you have in your body to a certain extent, because the less oxygen you have, then it's taken up by the toxins, and you can therefore start to look at how you might want to become more oxygenated as a flyer and hence implement better tools. So the offer is simple. You send off for an Aura ring kit. You make an investment of 314 euros. And basically there's a code that enables you to get a 50 euro discount. And you donate your data, and we take that data, extrapolate it. Then an algorithm is made, or they may make the decision to actually make a ring specifically for flyers. And you've done some good, because in the meantime, you are able to see where your sleep is objectively, plot what was going on in around that time that those sleep patterns occurred as they did. And you're also serving our community as such. My disclaimer, or I should say, I should let you know that I am an affiliate of Aura, and I don't earn money from it, but I do really feel that it's a great tool, and therefore I'm offering it to you as such. Let's move on to toolkits. Why would you need one? Well, I think it's fairly evident now from the presentation so far that the whole idea is you want to build as many lifestyle tools that you can to help you manage it in a healthy manner. And as I'm often quoted as saying, spacemen don't go into space without a uniform. You go to the low altitudes. Why should you not have the tools that help you do that? So why should it be bespoke? It should be bespoke to you because we don't all suffer the same jet lag symptoms. And as such, we're individuals, and the choice of what we need can differ. And there is quite a lot to consider in building your own, in building your own kit that serves your purposes and has you flying better. What should you put in that kit? Well, we've talked a bit about some supplements, lifestyle tools, biofeedback machines. If we're talking about categories quite specifically, I would say supplements, superfoods, quality water, good sleep technology. These are the areas that you want to look at in order to get the most out of what's available out there. So with that, we move on to our next poll. Excuse me. How many flights do you take a month? 1 a month, 2 a month, or more than 4? And that's pushing it, but yeah. Erica, can we have the next poll, please?
Yep, sure. Okay, that's being launched for you right now. So how many flights on average do you take a month? So 1 a month, 2 a month, or more than 4 a month? Okay, a couple more seconds and we're going to close that vote. Okay, and I'm going to show you now. You can see there that 57% once a month and 43% 2 a month, and no one travels over 4 a month, which is probably a good thing.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so that's fairly good. I guess 4 a month is kind of like what an airline steward or stewardess is, something that I would do, sometimes 5 a month, depending on the trip. But that's relatively manageable, but we can always use more and better tools to help us get the job done. So we come on to a class of substances of plant origin. They're not drugs, that are very useful. And when people talk about building resilience in the workplace, to me, this is what adaptogens are about. For those of you who may not know what adaptogens are, they are substances that help our immune systems work very well. And they work along the lines of helping you build vitality. They are non-toxic. They're not a tonic, which you just take once in a while. You can take them continually and build up the residue of energy and vitality that we've been discussing throughout. They are said to have intelligence, and they're said to have intelligence because they can go into, you can take an adaptogen in the morning and it will have a certain type of effect, and you can take the same adaptogen in the evening, and because your biochemistry is not the same as it was in the morning, it will have a different type of effect. And it has a non-specific way of working in the body. It doesn't upset anything, but it keeps on giving in that respect. One of the easiest to relate to, or one that you may have heard of, is called ginseng. But there are certain classes of adaptogens or types of adaptogens that are very useful for us because of where they grow and the fact that they grow in altitude, which is similar to the environment that we encounter when we step on a plane and take off. So that's what they are. And the fact is, as I've said, they help you build your immunity, and you can do it continually. That's what they do for you. And if you want to have a quick look at the ones that you could consider quite specifically, holy basil is one. It's also known as tulsi, and jal gulan is another, known as gynostemma. I mention these two specifically now simply because they're very easy to use. If you walk into Waitrose, Waitrose do a range of pucker teas, in the United Kingdom, and Tulsi is one of those. They have a 3 Tulsi tea, and I double bag it, boil it, and sip that. And you can actually sometimes feel your body reset. You can sometimes feel the stress leaving you if you make it quite strong. So this is something that's very easy. Pop in your travel bag, and away you go. Tulsi and Jal Gulan are easily available and ready as tea. Another one is rhodiola. Rhodiola is also known as Arctic root, and it has an ability to help you manage your nervous system. And then the last, which is quite particular specific to flyers, that helps you build kidney energy, is called Polygonum multiflori. It's otherwise known as Hoshu. This is something that's really useful to help you build in that kidney energy. It enables you to fortify the kidneys. In Chinese medicine, the kidneys is the powerhouse, it's your battery, and making sure you look after that gives you access to a lot more energy than you would rather have, in terms of taking caffeine, which revs your energy up and then causes you to drop down and expends and burns out the adrenal glands as such. So adaptogens are one of those things that everyone should consider in the space. Again, please be cautious with them if you're on any medication, and do refer to your primary healthcare practitioner. And there are actually different types of adaptogens for different areas. All the ones that I've named here are easily available in the United Kingdom, and there are some local ones that are particular to areas that do similar things. So a bit of research will open up that as an opportunity for you to be able to find what suits you, and to help you build up that reserve of energy and become resilient. So what are the key takeaways that we have here? Well, we need to invest in long-term strategies for business travel success, because to a certain extent, maybe our lives depend on it, our health, the quality of life that we see for ourselves is that important. We want to make sure that we keep that intact. We want to master the principles of healthy flying, and that way we can't come to a point where we are being sold snake oil, as it were. We have the ability to discern what works for us, and we are individuals, and that matters in discerning what works for you, because it's not the same, even though we might have a common base of symptoms and challenges in that space. In technology, we want to pick the good technology that supports us. Biofeedback machines, maybe a grounding sheet, things of that nature are well incorporated, so you can actually get feedback that gives you data to use, and data you can interpret it and then make behavioral change. We want to make sure that we get the habits of a good night's sleep under our belt, blackout blinds wherever possible, or a mask, shutting off all sources of lights to make sure that we cannot actually see our hand before our eyes in a dark room, because that is still too much light. And making sure that we build our rituals around sleep and take them with us on the road. So I feel that I may have rushed through a lot of information there and mentioned quite a few different things. I would like to suggest that in picking your tools to thrive healthily, if you only do 3 things that you, 1, start a supplement protocol of your choosing. 2, invest in smart sleep technology to help you get the feedback that you need. 3, prioritize a fitness regime that's suitable for your body type or your tastes. It doesn't always have to be the same type of exercises, but it must be something that gives you the aerobic capacity to function well, and increases, in certain instances, enables you to break a sweat in some way, shape or form. And we don't always have to choose the same tools to actually do that. And I have one last tip for the road, which is de-stress your life for an alkaline lifestyle. And that involves diet, the quality of the emotions that you come to the airport with, to whatever is going on for you at home or away, making sure that that's handled or at least put aside so that you can be focused in the moment and present as you go about your trips in order to get the best out of what's available. So in closing, I ask you please to think jet stress, not jet lag. Master the fundamentals. Choose your travel technology wisely. Choose lifestyle solutions that make it fun and flexible. This is important, so it has longevity and it's something that you find easy to do, not something that's hard to do. We all know of those programs that are so complicated, and we start with enthusiasm, but it goes nowhere because it's not sustainable. And the last offering is to always prime yourself for deep sleep. I'm open to take some questions or to go deeper into some of the areas that people might have questions about or might need more clarity about. So over to you, Erica.
Fantastic. Thank you very, very much. I've certainly picked up a few top tips. And I think actually some of what you were saying, like you say, it's about bringing it into our general lifestyle. So, for example, meditation and mindfulness is clearly something that is top of everyone's priority list when it comes to general well-being.
Yeah.
So that's something you can do. There's lots of apps around that, isn't there, as well? And I think that I know people with that. Is it called the Calmness app or something like that?
There's quite a few in the space. There's Breathe. I don't know if people are familiar with Deepak Chopra, but that's like a free app that actually helps you reset your breathing. The Apple Watch and some of the Garmin devices have these where you breathe in time, and it sort of brings that calmness to your nervous system. Because when we're talking about heart rate variability, which is a marker of health, it's literally breathing can help you reset that through using tools that help you tone the vagus nerve. The vagus nerve is one of those, it's known as the wandering nerve because it goes through so many important systems in the body, but it's kind of like getting the data of what's going on here. Am I stressed or not? And toning that vagus nerve gives you access through breathing to making sure that you have the flexibility and you therefore have greater HRV scores right for you.
Fantastic. Okay, thank you. Just to let you all know, with all of the supplements and various pucker teas and everything that Chris mentioned, we will be sending those in a follow-up email. So don't worry if you haven't taken note of all of those. And I don't even know how to spell some of them, so I will make sure to send you the correct names for everything as well. We've got a few questions that have come in, Chris. So lady here has put, do you recommend using light sleeping pills to sleep better on the aeroplane?
That's an interesting question, and I have an anecdote. I don't know that it's 100% true, but I've heard it mentioned a couple of times. The short answer to the question is no, I don't, because you never know when you're going to get caught out. So the story goes that an aircraft came back into London's Heathrow Airport and was towed to the hangar. And when the cabin crew get off the aircraft, the blankets are all piled up in the corner at the back and taken off, and then they put new ones on to redress the aircraft for its next sector. And under one of the blankets, they found someone who was sound asleep. So it had been towed all the way to the hangar, and apparently this person had taken some sleeping pills and basically missed, or the crew missed him, the cleaners missed him. And so sleeping pills on an aircraft, even if it's not that the aircraft goes to the hangar, if you take a sleeping pill and you don't take the right time, or there's a delay, then you mess up how it's going to work. Plus, on top of that, you're meddling with your biochemistry, and there are challenges with sleeping pills in terms of whether they suppress your other hormones, other hormone release, SSRIs, selective serotonin reuptake inhibitors. They tend to be of that nature, and therefore they should really seldom be used. As a nutritional therapist by training, I would prefer to use supplements which are distinct from sleeping pills, which are chemically generated and therefore have the ability to pretty much quash everything else at the, able to produce the results they do, but at the same time, it's not necessarily a holistic way of doing things.
No, okay, fabulous. I think that made me giggle slightly to myself there, that the cleaners didn't even see the person that fallen asleep. So I don't know what that says about how well they clean the aeroplane.
Yeah.
Say no more, say no more. So another person here has put, do you condone the use of melatonin?
No, not unless it's very specific. For one, again, I'm not a doctor. In the UK, if you want melatonin, you would need to go to a GP to get it. But melatonin, to a certain extent, is an end product. And if you dump an end product that is a hormone into the bloodstream, because hormones don't have organs where they're stored, they use the bloodstream in concert with each other. And if you put one in to the bloodstream, you're actually potentially upsetting the balance of all the other hormones in the bloodstream. And that can lead on to challenges. In particular, stewardesses trying to conceive who have gone down the melatonin pathway have had challenges because it upsets their cycle. And okay, it's not the same instance for gentlemen, but also there can be challenges in that respect. So it's not my first port of call. I have known people who have had challenges who fly and have gone to doctors and have been on it for a short time, but that's as much use as I would recommend.
Okay, fabulous. And are there any particular books that you would recommend people reading to learn more in depth around this? Obviously, you've whisked through it in an hour. If people do travel on a regular basis, is there a particular book that you would recommend?
In terms of supplements and melatonin specifically, or generally how to manage themselves?
I think all overall, really. So in terms of taking a holistic approach to it, so understanding it in a bit more depth, but then also around supplementation and building that resilience that you mentioned.
Right, well, it's fragmented, and I believe what I bring to the table to the community of flyers is the idea that I've flown for 20 years. I basically trained as a nutritional therapist. I keep an eye out for the scientific literature, and it's through my own need to want to travel well that I've, through time, got this system together. And as such, I draw from the fields of chronobiology. You can find research papers at PubMed that talk about some of the aspects of that. Is it all consolidated in a book? Well, the best I've tried to do is in my book, Farewell Jet Lag, Cures from a Flight Attendant, where the first half is about how we got to this stage and what it's doing to us and redefining what jet lag is defined as. And then the 6-step process gives you an insight as to the different types of things like we've discussed here and others that you can actually do. So it's a conglomeration of my reading, my research, and working with people and looking at the literature and seeing chronobiology says this is useful, the scientific literature says this, aviation medicine says this, and condensing that into a system. So people would actually have to read all those related aspects, or could read the book and use the reference at the back of the book to get an idea of where they might want to deepen their research for the specifics that they're looking for.
Superb, thank you very much. Okay, well, we've gone through all of the questions that have come in. It's worth mentioning that Chris is very kindly putting on a competition. So that competition is to win a grounding sheet, which he mentioned. I will be putting details of that in the follow-up email, which you will receive later on today. There will also be details of the Aura Ring programme as well that Chris mentioned, along with all of the details around all of the different supplements that you can take as well. So Chris, you can send all of those over to me in an email, and I will distribute those to everybody that's been on the call today. No so I'm just going to move forward and just say that our Travel Wellbeing series will be continued in 2019. What you can see on the screen now are some of the subjects that ladies have come forward and men that have come forward to say that they would find helpful. There will be a link that will go in follow-up email, and I'd really appreciate it if you just take 60 seconds of your time to put forward what you would find useful and beneficial to you as business travellers of today. It's important that we put on things that are relevant to you, of course. If you haven't done so already, please do connect with us. You can see the Maiden Voyage website on the screen and also the No Jet Stress website as well. So please do connect up, and on social media as well. You can see there all of our social media handles as well. We'd welcome that. I should also mention, given that we're talking about aviation, is that Maiden Voyage are currently doing an aviation survey. So again, I'll put the link into that, and that's really to find out how you as business travellers of today find the whole business travel experience. So we'd really appreciate you taking time out of that. There's also a prize draw for those people that complete that as well. So we'd really appreciate that. So without further ado, I would like to say thank you to all of you for taking this hour out of your time to invest in yourselves. A huge thank you to you, Chris, for all of the effort that you've put in terms of preparation and delivering these slides and delivering the contents that you have and sharing your wealth of knowledge. It's huge amounts. So thank you so much for doing that. I'm sure everybody, I'm speaking on behalf of everybody, really appreciates that. As I said, we'll be sending a follow-up email. So without further ado, I'd like to wish you all very safe travels. Of course, we're coming up to the festive period, so I'd also like to wish you all an amazing festive time, and wishing you all lots of health and happiness over this festive period. So thank you very much, and look forward to you being in touch. Goodbye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.